Very good morning, everybody. Hello, Instagram. I am here to introduce you to my Wild Yarn Batsford textile takeover. Here's the book. Ta-da! I'm incredibly proud of this book, and thank you to everybody who has been so kind and messaged me to say how you receive it. It's really important to me that it reaches people. So yes, here we go. Thank you, Batsford, for supporting my vision for the book. Everything, the texture, the entire aesthetic, the design. It has been so lovingly created by the whole team. And that is the part that you don't see. But what I hope you see is in the final book, which is a nice big textile craft library book, part of the Batsford Crafts Library. What I hope is that when you receive your copy, that you can really feel just how much care has gone into it. It's really been, I'm going to say now, almost 2.5 years between my proposal and having the book in my hands. And a lot happens in 2.5 years. So yeah, this is the result, and I am I'm happy with it. So I will do a flick through for you. So the book is a few different layers of story upon one another. So depending on what you need, there's obviously the story of the craft, which starts from how you find your inspiration, and that's from a non sort of hierarchical or design-led point of view. It's very much a feeling sense, so be with that. I think that's certainly a way of working that I find works for me. So there are some dedications and poems here, and then we get to the contents page, which I hope gives you a clue about the whole book. Really, it's all the things that inspire me, that I collect in my pockets, that I see when I walk my children to school, when I go to the woods. The things that I'm looking out for in nature are always around, and I gathered this palette together. So it's very much about a natural colour palette. And whilst that might seem like neutral and, dare I say, you know, limited when there's a whole spectrum of colours out there, actually there's an entire spectrum of colours in the natural colour palette that are incredibly subtle, and that's what I wanted to work with, because that's how I work. So the chapter headings are 6 chapters. The first one is sensory craft, experiencing ethical fibres, and that talks you through this feeling sense and gets you into that energy of what is it that I want to make rather than what should I make. It is a kind of a different headspace. And then how you might go about sourcing fibres that feel right for you and what you want to experience from your work. I think it's an invitation to the art therapy model of craft can really hold you and everything that you bring. It's not just about I'm going to make this today. It's like I'm bringing my whole self today. The second chapter is called Painting with Wool. Painterly approaches to wool blending. I do use other fibres, and I use wool. I talk about the ethics of that. I talk about how I approach wool ethics. Also, I live in England, and the UK has an abundance of wools and rare breed wools and small flocks, and it is madness to me that wool gets wasted. Much of it does. So I would like to balance a holistic point of view in using the resources that nature provides and the animals provide in the landscape that you occupy. It might be very different for you if you're in somewhere that is incredibly hot or doesn't have holistic wildlife or livestock that needs to be sheared or cared for in that way. You might have plant fibres that are in abundance, and so refocus on what it is that is your environment, your landscape. The fibres that are around you are really part of the conversation you're having with where you live. So that looks very different for different people, so there's no criticism or judgment there. It's how do you source something that feels right for you and takes into account ethics, welfare, environmental issues, and all of those things. And it's a big subject, but I tackle it through a gentle invitation to think about it. Okay, then chapter 3 is called Spinning Beauty, which is the principles of hand spinning. Now, how I spin is a sort of process whereby I have researched historical and heritage spindles and also less well-known methods of spinning, like a kick spindle, Navajo Dene, floor spindle, and also e-spinners. There are a lot of people that don't use e-spinners, and I do, and I love them. And the country e-spinner, the Ashford country e-spinner bobbin, is it one, you can get 1 kilo of yarn on that bobbin, which is a whole project. You could weave a blanket with that amount of wool. And why I use an e-spinner is I learnt to spin on an e-spinner because it was a lot like a sewing machine. It had the same pedal, and I trained and I had a career in fashion and costume. So my training was on industrial sewing machinery when I was 16. So moving to an e-spinner to learn to spin actually worked really well for my brain. It was like a crossover of skill. So the e-spinner country bobbin, the massive one, the kilo bobbin, can transfer directly onto the country spinner treadled spinning wheel. So you have a choice there between an e-spinner and a treadled spinning wheel, a traditional treadled spinning wheel, which is, it's always nice to have choice. So it's sort of one bobbin serves the two purposes. My other favourite method of spinning is using the Dene floor spindle, the Navajo spindle. It's a way of connecting with the floor and the body that spinning wheels and treadling doesn't actually have the same presence. And I think in the Western model, spinning wheels and treadling is very normal in sort of the recent past. Before that, it would have more hand spindling, smaller hand spindles as well for linen. Because I make quite chunky yarn, I need a bigger spindle because I can't get enough yarn or spin on a small spindle. So I did a lot of trial and error. How am I going to spin something that's quite energized and wild on something small? So which spindle is correct for what I am not only wanting to do with my yarn, but how I want to be in my body as a tool. So I talk about different spindles and spinning wheels from that point of view, from what works for me. And I think it's an invitation really to think about how you spin and the results of your spin, and then what spindle actually might be better for you, and experiment with it. It's very much an invitation to experiment. So then chapter 4 is how we finish the yarn, how to hank, soak, weight and wet finish. This is really important for me. This is another overhang from my time in the fashion industry, especially doing historical bias cutting. You have to have continuity between batches of work so that you can predict how it will behave on the loom, or if you're knitting. there's different considerations. Do you want more bounce, less bounce? Did the work get overspun? Do you need to relax it? Do you, how does the final yarn need to be treated? And often with the right use of water and weights, you can get the right balance. And it's a lot of fun actually figuring that out. Chapter 5 is curating and collecting, and the principles of curating a yarn stash and a collection, because we often stash yarns because they are limited edition or very beautiful, or they speak to us in some way. And sometimes the yarn itself is just so beautiful, we can't imagine what we would use it for, but we want to just have it. And there's something about that quality that maybe you can translate into your own process of when you spin for yourself. And then chapter 6 is project ideas, so working with hand spun yarn in contemporary crafts. So I talk about my work as a weaver and how I work with my yarn and why it works for me. The variegation works on the loom, because I suppose the looms that I have, I also can adapt them very easily. I'm not a classically trained weaver. I very much innovated and freestyled it to the point where the weaving work looked like what I was feeling it should look like, if that makes sense. So, and then I have quite an extensive bibliography because I do read a lot, and I have quite an extensive craft library myself. And then some resources, artists and organisations for you to look at and look into. So that's the contents. So in itself really is a tutorial and a guide to not only how I do what I do and why I do it that way, but also an invitation for you to add certain techniques to your practice. So how am I going to flip this book the right way? We have some amazing, very highly textured photography by Alan Callender. Main photography is done by Bella Verardi, and there's also a cameo from Michaela Meadow. He's a long-term collaborator and photographer and book designer who I work with a lot, who did the photography for the Selkie. If any of you have that from a few years ago now. So yeah, just this one's by Michaela on a film. Michaela's a film still photographer. Alan Callender. It's all about capturing these moments and then trying to translate them into a yarn that will then become a textile in some form. So painting with wool starts off very, very open, and there's also different colour palettes through the book. There's a pale one, there's a greyer one, there's a browner one, but ultimately it's all interchangeable. So I just want you to get a sense of how hyper textured and subtle the whole book is, with practical methodologies and tool review, well, not reviews, but tool reviews of the tools that I use and how I use them in combination. I'm not a purist, like I will mix up different tools for different techniques. Hackles and combs. Hackles are traditionally used for linen, but you can hackle blended wool for building up your blend. Put the tool to work in the way that you need it to. Tools are expensive, and if you've invested in a tool, it needs to work for you. So yeah, handmade blending board. This is something that I made a few years ago now, and it's really, really helpful and very portable. So I tell you how to make that. I also give you links to where you can buy pre-made drum carders, blending boards, spindles, wheels, all these things. Also, there are some craftspeople who will make tools for you, which is an incredible privilege to use handmade tools. Lots of texture. How do you get all these subtle textures and light-giving qualities into something that you're ready to spin? So it is like painting. It is like a recipe. and how you put that together is very personal and individual. So yeah, the blending chapter is extensive. This is also an amazing fleece from the Isle of Oscary with Teresa and Hamish, who have the magical seaweed eating sheep, who I talk about often and I reference in the Selkie. They're very folkloric creatures. Incredible fleece. Very rare breed, liminal, magical. Other inspiration, shells and chalk. I live in Brighton on the south coast, and we're on a chalk bank here in the Downs, so everything is slightly powdered with this chalk-like quality, with an amazing quality of light coming off the sea. I'm quite far back in Brighton, but I still get the amazing light. I'm in a north-facing room on a October morning, and the light is incredible. So I am very grateful for Brighton's natural light. All the photography is done in natural light in my garden studio. I'm in my indoor studio at the moment. Bella and I wanted to capture the natural light, because that's the best way for me to translate the colours that I see in real time to you. I want you to see what I see. I have a very, very hyperchromatic sense of tone. So if a colour is slightly off, it throws me. So I didn't want to have the images to be processed at all. I wanted them to be natural daylight and really as they are. And they were photographed in the autumn. So the quality of light is consistent to this time of year. So I do talk about drop spindling. A lot of people come to spinning through the drop spindle. I found drop spindling very difficult because of the gravitational element. However, one of the best spindles that you can adapt is the Kromsky drop spindle with the wool that it kind of unscrews. It's like clicks off, and I replaced it with a 2-inch cup hook. Not a 2-inch cup, a 1-inch cup hook, 2.5 centimetre cup hook. And what that means is the bigger the hook, the thicker the yarn that you can get through. And it is a relatively long spindle. Let me see if I've got one to hand. I think I do. So that's the spindle part. Yeah, it's it's as big as the book page. It's probably about 24 centimetres, something like that. And the wall, let me grab the wall. That's the wall. And what you do is, so it comes with a small silver cup hook on the top. What you do is you put this in a clamp, and you get your drill, and you get a drill bit that matches your 1-inch cup hook, this part. Match the drill bit, drill in nice and slowly. It will take a drill bit, and then you can pop the cup hook in, if I can say it. Okay, this is a really simple adaptation. That means that you can have what is essentially a very portable drop spindle that can take more textured, bulky yarn. Okay, that's in nice and tight. You don't need to glue it or anything. It's perfectly fine. Take your wall, pop it in. It's a tapered spindle, so you pop it in, and you can give it a little twist. Did you hear that? Not going anywhere. And then you can, that's how you can drop spin. It is a big drop spindle, and it works for wild yarn. And so I have a picture of it in the book. It doesn't look as big, I suppose, as it is in real life. So there you go. If you've never done hand spun yarn before, this is probably a good port of call to start, but I would like to think that if you want to start on a spinning wheel, that's your choice, and you would be able to do that. There you go. So that's that. That's my kick spindle. I put the kick spindle in because they're quite unusual. That was handmade in America by True Creations, a gentleman called Jim. And the reasons why spinning wheels and spinners get adapted are very interesting. So maybe I'll talk about that at some other time. Usually it's someone who's a tool maker or a woodworker, has a friend or a partner who has a love of spinning, and they need some sort of adaptation for various reasons. Portability, physical need, just curiosity, and prototypes are made, and then eventually something comes that works. And this is a portable, it flat packs, it's very, very elegantly designed kick spindle. So I feature it there because it is a wonderful tool. Here are some of my Dene Navajo spindles that were made for me. One is in walnut with a removable wall, and the other is actually in hawthorn, which, if anybody knows about folklore, hawthorn is a very liminal wood, and this was made by a woodworker in England who had a piece of ancient hawthorn from a tree that had fallen, and the wall is made out of hawthorn. So I'm very, very lucky to have that. When I'm choosing spindles for other people, I do take into account the wood and their temperament, or their disposition in the wood, because I think folklore is important to pay attention to. So we have a lot of things like this. Let me show you one more thing for the knitters, and I also talk about felting as well. You can knit with wild yarn. I have some amazing friends and crafts friends and collaborators who did all the knitted and crocheted and what other samples did we have? We have a little bit of needle binding, nail binding. Marina Skua, Francesca Clooney, Zen Kavuli, and Biz Fretty, who are incredibly wonderful craft friends and are as enthusiastic about it as me. So thank you so much for all your help realising this. I have some felted samples, some wet felt and some needle felt, with a nod to Gladys Paulus, who made an amazing felted wall seal mask for me a few years ago now for the Selkie, and I carded very thin sheets of the fibre and sent them to her for sampling, and Gladys created the most incredible mask for me. So I'm very grateful for that time. That inspired me significantly. And then some of my own work here in the weaving, and then how the yarn is translated into the textile art form that you practice, I practice, which could be anything and everything really. Textiles cover a lot of bases with their scope. And then some part of my outdoor studio there. So I will leave it at that, and hope that you find something in here for you. I'll leave it at this actually. Here we go. There we go. I think if I'm going to sum this book up in an image, it's something like this. Inspiration, the yarn in development, the fibre, and the outcome, and how the translation isn't too tight and it isn't lost. It's not an identical similitude of a piece of driftwood or a root, but it is a conversation, and it's my hope that whatever the outcome is, it maintains the integrity of the place of inspiration that it came from through your hands as spinners. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for loving Wild Yarn.